Alright, so we finished the revolutions of the Western Hemisphere for now, as far as the Latin American revolutions. However, revolution is still going on in Europe, even in France. Okay, look at your notes. We're in like the mid 1800s almost, or about, and France is still going through a whole bunch of turmoil, and they still have riots. In 1848, they have a constitution that they finally developed with a parliament and with a strong president that was elected by the people. Finally, they have a democratic society. And so Louis Napoleon becomes Emperor Napoleon III. This is the descendant of Napoleon Bonaparte. And under him, France is going to experience like their real first established time period of true prosperity. In Russia, now you got to remember, Russian history is kind of like a roller coaster, and they're really, really far behind a lot of the rest of the world. Peter the Great, the guy who tried to westernize Europe, and even Catherine the Great, they made a lot of advancements, but Russia is still very far behind, and they're going to continue to be far behind. They're not going to have a revolution until during World War I in 1917. So Russia, in the mid-1800s, they lost the Crimean War, and that was simply because their economy wasn't very good and their transportation systems weren't very good. They actually had a major lack of transportation, which whenever you're at war and you're trying to get people from place to place and food and supplies from place to place and you don't have adequate transportation systems, that's going to be very, very difficult. And so later, you have Tsar Alexander II, Alexander Romanov, and he moved Russia towards modernization even more. He's also going to abolish serfdom, and Russia is going to be flooded with nationalistic viewpoints. People are going to want to improve their country, which means that they are going to have industrial development in order to fix the problems they had during the Crimean War. So in Eastern Europe, you have, and even Central Europe, you have a very, very, very diverse group of people just throughout the entire place. So many different ethnic groups, and this includes the Habsburgs in Austria, the Romanovs in Russia, and the Ottoman Empire that's been around since the mid 1400s. And a big thing with different countries is that they wanted to have alliances. And what else can cement a good alliance than a marriage? So, as different heirs to the thrones of different countries married, and there were different battles, the control of all these different lands in Central and Eastern Europe, they changed a lot. And again, this huge rise of nationalism is going to lead to a lot of nervousness and unrest throughout all these different empires that were still in existence in Eastern Europe, like the Habsburgs. The Habsburgs had been around for centuries, and they are finally going to kind of fall. In 1866, so this is just after the American Civil War, Austria-Hungary is going to split into the two countries that we know today, Austria and Hungary. And nationalism is also going to weaken that empire over the next 40 years, just on the brink of World War I. Nationalism is one of those things where it can be a good thing, it can be a really bad thing. The ultimate goal of instilling nationalism into citizens of a country is to get them to be for their country, but it often results in very radical thinking and revolution and violence. Alright, so in Russia, you have the Romanov dynasty. Okay, so like Alexander II, his last name would have been Romanov, so this is like the family name. They have, like, think about how big Russia is. Okay, it's the largest country, land-wise, in the entire world, and even back then it was huge. And you are not going to have the same ethnic group, the same culture, the same types of people in a country that is that big. But you had one government and one person that was in control of that entire area. So they had a huge challenge of maintaining control over the immense diversity that they had throughout their empire. And so the Tsar was like, hey, if we actually force Russian culture onto our people, maybe we can unify them and they'll be willing to change their culture. Sounds good in theory, but it's not going to work. I mean, think about if somebody came up to you and said, hey, you have to forget everything about who you are and you're going to follow this culture. I mean, think about how you would react. Okay, most people probably would not want to give up their culture because their culture is what makes you who you are. And that's Russification is not going to work out the way the Tsar intended. It actually leads to additional problems and divides the Russians from the minorities even more rather than bringing them back together. Meanwhile, down in like the Balkan Empire, which is southeastern Europe, and even into present-day Turkey, and into the Middle East a little bit, you have the Ottoman Turks. They actually granted equal citizenship to all their people, which really angered the conservatives. So again, those conservatives those are the people who don't want to change anything. They're happy with the way things are. And so because they're granting these freedoms to like the middle and the working class, that is going to lead to a lot of difficulties and upheavals within the empire. Alright, so you have two countries in Europe that are going to be unified during the 1800s. And the first country is going to be Italy. So Italy has that guy named the Pope who lives there. And ever since the Middle Ages, okay, you had the Papal States. So it was pretty much like a country inside of Italy that the Pope had control of. And so that's going to be a major issue. Count Camillo de Cavour, he was the prime minister at this time, and he drives all the Austrians out of northern Italy. Okay, and this really helped nationalists rebel in southern Italy. So you have all of these different groups and all these different problems, and people are just very, very divided. You have Giuseppe Garibaldi, who was a strong radical nationalistic leader. And he is going to let the Sardinian king rule. Now, Sardinia is in southern Italy. Okay, so picture that's kind of like where we're at. And one of the big things that you'll need to know is that Garibaldi was the leader of the Red Shirts. Now, he is going to take, in 1870, his forces are going to take over the Papal States. Now, if you look at this map over here on the right, this purple area, these are the Papal States, okay? And you can see right in here, there's Rome, all right? So this is a pretty good chunk of Italy that the Pope has control over. It's always been a big argument as far as, like, how much control the Pope should have over secular issues, so other governments. But the Red Shirts under Garibaldi are going to come in, and they are going to take control of the Papal States. Rome is going to be established as the capital of Italy, which it is still true today. And the big thing that changes with the unification of Italy, and really something that needed to be done in order for Italy to be truly unified, is that this whole area is no longer going to be the Papal States. Okay? So it is, hopefully you guys know that with Rome today, you have Vatican City, which is inside of Rome. Okay, so the Papal States today is Vatican City, right? So the Pope had control of all of this at one time, and whenever the Red Shirts come in under Garibaldi and he is going to destroy that empire, this becomes this, okay? Little bitty area. This is actually the smallest independent country in the entire world today. And you can see from the map, Vatican City pretty much consists of St. Peter's Basilica and their gardens, okay? It's extremely small. Like, it's a giant church and their lands. And this is where the Pope would have Mass and where the Pope lives. So again, this is actually within the city of Rome, which is right there. So you can see the Papal States lost all of this land and all of this control. And this is still true in today's world. And Italy is officially unified. Alright, so with the unification of Germany, okay, this is the one that we're going to focus on a little bit more because it truly sets the stage for World War I into World War II the Cold War, and even how Germany is today in contemporary Germany. It's essential to understand how all of this played out to affect Europe, even in today's world. So, you have Prussia, okay, out here to the east of Germany. And then you have the German lands. Okay, even here you can see just how divided Germany is. Okay, you have all these different regions and countries within these lands. Now, Prussia was primarily German at this time. Okay, and Prussia was determined to unite Germany and create a strong army in Central Europe that would challenge any other army pretty much on the face of the world. And that's exactly what they did, and that ties into World War I. But we'll come back to that later. So in 1861, Wilhelm I is the ruler, and he is supported by a upper class called the Junkers. One of the most famous Junkers was Otto von Bismarck, who is in the picture. In 1862, he is going to be elected as prime minister, and he developed a policy called Realpolitik. And this means like real politics, okay, realism. And he was very much straight to the point. He's like, whatever it takes to get it done, get the job done. So he is possibly one of the most significant rulers of German history, okay, because he plays the key role in unifying Germany for the first time ever. And a big thing, he ruled without the consent of Parliament, okay. If you kind of think back to England, okay, King Charles I also did that. He was the guy that got executed during the English Civil War. But that's just, it's a difference of countries. Okay, at that time, England was already a nation state. It was already unified. They had a good thing going. But he came in and screwed it all up. Okay, which is why the people rebelled against him in the English Civil War, and he was executed. But Germany, they needed a strong ruler. They needed somebody to come in and take control. And so that's exactly what Bismarck does, and he ignores Parliament. Bismarck is going to form an alliance with Austria. So from here on out, for the most part, Germany and Austria are together. Okay, they're going to be allies. And so they increase nationalism, and the Junkers and Otto von Bismarck is really going to earn a lot of respect among the Germans. And then you have a conflict known as the 7 Weeks' War. Not to be confused with the 7 Years' War. They are very different. Bismarck, several times throughout his career, purposely created conflict with a different area in order to win what he wanted to win. So previously, Austria and Germany, or Prussia, had gained the regions of Schleswig and Holstein. And Bismarck purposely created this conflict with Austria over the border now between these two regions. So Prussia was very superior, and they essentially humiliated Austria. Alright, another major war under Bismarck was the Franco-Prussian War, and this is the final stage of German unification. The alliance that Otto von Bismarck creates for this war is also going to set the foundation for the alliance with Germany in World War I. So the Germans accepted Prussian leadership. Okay, they accepted Wilhelm I, and they crowned him Kaiser, or Emperor. They accepted Otto von Bismarck because they were primarily German, even though they were from Prussia. And finally, you can see in the map the Second Reich, or the Second Empire. Now, in German history, you have 3 different Reichs. The First Reich is the Holy Roman Empire that lasted for over 1,000 years. The Second Reich is Otto von Bismarck's empire, which you can see in the map. The Third Reich, which you have hopefully heard of before you've heard that term, that is going to be Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler.